So what is going on, MMA nerds out there? I'm Jonathan Salmon, and I've done a little bit of an analysis on the Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya fight. Just finished watching it again for the second time, and I found a good amount of takeaways from this one. Izzy had a whole bunch of problems in his fight. Obviously, he lost the fight by unanimous decision. We all know that by now, but yeah, basically, I went back, looked at the fight, saw, okay, what did he do wrong? What did he do right? What did Jan do right? And how did he really snatch the victory away from him during the fight? So, from what I could see, all right, we'll start with Izzy, what Izzy did well, right? 'Cause I kind of want to highlight what they both did well and what they both, had some trouble with. So I'll start with Izzy. I guess his weaknesses will be revealed as I talk about what Jan did well. So what Izzy did well in the fight was what he always usually does well, which is using a lot of feints, keeping his man guessing, keeping him off kilter. Jan bit a lot on the feints, right? So I noticed it the first time, okay, Jan is biting on these feints. Jan is really cautious, and I think part of him being so cautious and being very defensive, being ready to check a kick or parry or do something else like that, him biting on those feints, usually when you do that, it kind of allows, the opponent to, you made them make a mistake and they flinch and they open up and they show you, a point of attack that you can exploit. I don't think Izzy really saw that though too much in this fight. What I did notice is that he tended to basically he'd feint a lot. He would get these reactions out of Jan, and then a lot of his attacks would end up going up high. He'd throw a lot of high kicks. He threw, he definitely was trying to throw a lot of leg kicks. He threw some to the body. It was a nice mixture of everything. But I think Izzy, even though he was so successful with the feints, felt like he didn't go to the body enough. And I felt like he that part of his game could have really changed the tide for him during the fight rather than just going for the head most of the fight. I think he did really well with that, but it's, I'm just looking at my sheet right now, right? Lock, boom, right? Get the back behind the scenes treatment here. Yes, inside leg kicks, right? So inside leg kicks from southpaw stance, right, for Izzy, right? So Izzy switched stances throughout the fight. I'm a big proponent of fighting from both stances. I think it is a necessary thing in both kickboxing and MMA. I'll get into it, why I think that in probably another video, but Izzy switched stances throughout the fight. He'd be here, he's moving, right? He's in southpaw, he's feinting, he's giving him all the different looks, right? And what he did really well from southpaw is the inside leg kick, boom. So rather than focus, entirely on just trying to throw and land the high kick, he'd throw that inside leg kick and it would land hard on Jan. I noticed in the first round, Izzy tried to throw a lot of leg kicks from orthodox stance, right? From left foot forward stance. He tried to throw a lot of leg kicks, outside rear leg kicks. He tried to throw those. Jan was great at checking the kicks, right? So Jan would just pick his leg up, not even that real traditional Thai style of doing where it's just it's really hard. He just kind of just picked his leg up, let it kind of skitter through, and he would just be on him. He would just constantly be on Izzy. So that also, when Izzy decided to go to southpaw and throw those leg kicks in the open stance, right? When Jan was orthodox, left foot forward, and then Izzy was right foot forward, he would throw those leg kicks hard in the inside, and those were successful in landing. I think he should have probably kept to that a little bit more. I noticed that he kind of would, fade back and go back into the head kicking game. He loves to throw that question mark kick, and he kept throwing it during this fight. And almost felt like it was like to his detriment. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you have like a great technique that you can do very well, and you kind of go to the well a little bit too much. And I kind of felt like that's what Izzy was doing. So what else Izzy did right was using his broken rhythm jab, right? So when he was in an orthodox stance, he would use his jab and he'd use his foot feints, shoulder feints, pop the jab, right? You can see from the side here. He would just use those feints, the step feints, right? Step that front foot, shoulder check, right? Shrug that shoulders towards his target, and then he would actually throw. So he would get Jan not really understanding the rhythm of when his jab would be thrown and when, you know, it was just going to be a fake or a feint. So he would really just mix it up. He didn't know it was coming. He would just stutter step, stop, freeze a little bit, get Jan to react, then he would throw, right? Like that, kind of a flick, like a flick jab. Sometimes he can make it a little bit harder, turn the knuckles over and land with a little bit more power. So he's really good with those things, right? And these are all typical Adesanya tricks that he does in his fights, and he's really good at all those things. Those were his successes. The issue, despite the fact that, you know, in the third round, he hurt him with this sweeping kind of rear hook from the southpaw stance, even though he landed that and buzzed Jan pretty well, there wasn't really a bunch of times where he had Jan hurt. And I think, you know, Izzy being the longer and, you know, I don't want to say more skilled striker per se, because Jan obviously did very, very well in the striking. But I think he had longer legs is what the main part is. And he had longer legs. He should have been just stabbing Jan with front kicks. Boom, front kicks all day. Boom, front kicks all day. He would land a couple of times, but never a consistent kind of thing. And I think if you are the smaller opponent, in my opinion, in terms of like body mass size, right? Yeah, you're fighting the bigger person. You want to wear on their gas tank, and you can even see that in the fight. Jan started to get a little bit tired at the end of the fourth and into the fifth round. He was exhausted. Even though in the fourth round he won, got that takedown, and controlled Izzy. Fifth round he was exhausted. So let's get into what Jan did well, right? And what Jan did well, the first thing I noticed is that his jab was on point, right? He would not just jab to the head of Izzy, right? He'd keep that high, right hand up here high. He would throw the jab, and he would mix it up to the body as well. So he wouldn't just go and headhunt all day on Izzy. Izzy is a taller guy. He likes to lean away and likes to pull and counter, which he did a couple of times during the fight. He likes to pull and then come back with his cross. Jan, knowing that, he decided that, okay, I can't just go to his head. I got to go to his body too. So he would just mix it up. He wouldn't even necessarily lean and go in like a traditional kind of way, like a boxer would do. You know, he would kind of come in and then just lower his jab to the body. So he would just mix it up. He would double up his jab. He would feint, he would pump fake, right, just to get close to Izzy. And he would also jab with Izzy. So when Israel decided to throw his jab, Jan would meet him in the middle. Like he would try and just either catch and shoot or just hit him and try and meet him before he could, you know, Israel's jab could fully extend. The reason why he's able to get away with that is because him having the shorter limbs, right? You know, you'd say, oh, Israel is going to have the jabbing advantage. He's going to be able to keep him on the outside. Problem is, when you're the shorter person, shorter limbs, but you keep the distance really close, he was so in on Israel the whole fight. He wouldn't give him space. He tried to take away space away from Israel the entire fight. And that's kind of really what won Jan the fight, is that distance control. Israel likes to use the hand control, reach his hands out and control his opponent's hand from their guard, keep their hands there, and then he would either throw an inside kick or a body kick, or he would throw some different other offense. I see that a lot A lot of the city kickboxing guys like to do that. I think his friend Oberg, who fought earlier in the card, he was doing that too during his fight. He would control with the hands and then throw a kick, inside leg kick, all day. So I've been noticing that now too. But yeah, what Jan would do is as soon as Israel tried to play that game and reach his hand out and control his hand, he would just take a half step back and then he would come back in with his jab again. He would take a half step back, or if his hands were out there, Israel reached it out, he would just bring it in tight. And then he's back on it again, back on the jab. Jab is a big thing. The hand control is a big thing, right? Taking away hand control and also utilizing his parry. His parry, yeah, like Jan Blachowicz impressed me in the fight. Like, he already impressed me in his last few performances, but in this one, how systematic he was in taking away Israel's weapons, it was pretty impressive to me. It showed like him and his camp did their homework big time. So what I mean by the parry, right? So he would use his rear hand parry for either Israel's jab, right? He would parry it away, parry it down, right? Parry it away, or when Israel's in southpaw stance and throw his left cross, he would also catch that a lot. He'd also just parry that down. And what would he do? Parry, left hook, right? He would parry, he would throw the lead hook. He would parry, throw the lead hook, he'd throw a combination. He would get close into Israel's space, throw a right hand into the body kick. You know, he would constantly take away space from Israel. And the only way he could do that is by having the good defense that he did. So that's really one of the great tools that he used to kind of win this fight, is just take away space, utilizing tight defense, just basic defense too, and just stay in Israel's face. Make sure he's checking those leg kicks, of course. Yes, he would return. So every time he would return fire in range, he wouldn't allow Israel to just kind of get off all of his combinations and just get out for free. He would throw, like after Israel would throw his combination, he's getting right back at him with something else. He's not just letting him go for free. He's not just like, okay, he threw his combination, oh, what is he going to do next? You know, even though he's biting on a lot of Israel's feints, he seems so locked in. Like he would bite on the feint, but his hands would never go all over the place. He would bite on the feint, and sometimes he would lift his leg, but, you know, either Israel just couldn't exploit it at the moment, or maybe Israel himself thought it was a feint coming back or an attack coming back, so he would stop his offense from going. It's like sometimes throwing so many feints could be a detriment too, because, you know, when you throw a lot of feints like that, it's like you're doing that to not only open up strikes for yourself, but you also want your opponent to throw. I felt like Israel was feinting so he could force Jan to throw, and then he can counter. The problem is when you're a counter striker, the big thing that can throw you off is someone who has a good feinting game. If they can feint very well as well, you know, it throws you off if you're countering. You know what I mean? You don't even know, like, okay, you're trying to read the time and let them throw, and then you can throw back. But if you misread their time, then you leave yourself open to get countered yourself. So I think a lot of the times that Jan would be like, checking his leg and putting his leg up and moving away. Like, I felt like Israel probably felt like an attack was coming back, but he wasn't quite sure. And every time it didn't come back, he was like, okay, I don't know when is he going to actually come back and throw his own counter so I can counter that, you know? So I think that was one of the major issues that held Israel back in this fight. He switched stances a lot. Yeah. Jan switched stances himself. So what he would do is sometimes he would just step back into southpaw, right? He would be doing most of his work from orthodox, and then all of a sudden he steps back into southpaw. He steps back into southpaw, and he would either throw his left hand or he would throw left kick, all right? And he has a pretty good left kick. So he had to kept Israel honest as well. So anytime he went into a southpaw stance, Israel couldn't just like explode forward or anything like that. He knows a left kick is coming. But even when you do know that attack is coming, it can still be enough to corral your opponent or get them moving in the way you want them to, or even just stepping back and then stepping forward can be enough of a feint to allow Israel to kind of freeze up for a second or retreat or get out of harm's way. His left hook, right? So his left hook, super important. His left hook and his jab, those are the most important tools of the fight for Jan. He had a good jab. He made sure he jabbed with Israel. He made sure he took away Israel's jab every time he could, and he would mix up the head and to the body. But he also would have a left hook counter. So anytime that Israel would throw his right hand, he would try and come over the top with his left hook. He would come over the top with the left hook, clip Israel a little bit, and force him to back away. And then it really came to play in fourth round when Israel, I believe it was Israel was backing up Jan. Jan was backing up against the cage, and he stepped back. He threw his left hook, right, as a counter, right? Jan did. Jan threw his left hook as a counter. Israel kind of pulled back, expecting to be more of a longer striking exchange, but right after the left hook, Jan dipped down, went for that reactive double. And the whole thing, for me, reactive doubles are the only double legs that really make sense, even in MMA. Not to say it's impossible, but we saw what happened to Curtis Blades the other day when you just go in for a double leg and you don't set it up. You can get the lights shut off. So it can be risky in my opinion, especially if it's like a really hard power puncher. But, Jan, he threw that left hook. Israel's coming forward, right? Israel avoids the left hook, but he's still in the range to kind of counter back and throw offense. And off of that hook, Jan dips low. He gets in for the double. Boom, takes him down, controls him for the rest of the round. And kind of saw a similar approach in round 5 too, in terms of that takedown. Wasn't off of a left hook, but it was a reactive double. He caught Izzy when Izzy was just kind of getting into a rhythm again. He's getting into a rhythm and kind of trying to walk him down, being overly aggressive. Jan takes his legs out from underneath him, puts him on his butt, and rides that position out for the rest of the fight. There was also another time when, and I don't know what this could have been, but maybe Israel was getting a little tired, fatigued, or whatever it was. But, Israel was in the southpaw stance. And he does this, he has a tendency to do this where he just kind of just switches stance right in front of the person, right? Which can be dangerous, but it can also be effective if you can get away with it. A lot of you get away with it. But if you don't, and the person's primed and looking for that, you can get clipped with a shot. So what happened was Israel switched stance without throwing a feint, without really kind of engaging Jan or making him back up or making him wonder what he was doing next. He just stepped forward. That was the problem. See, I feel like if you're switching stance, if you're in the pocket and you're right in the person's attacking space, you can switch stance and go back and then still have your guard up, right? Because it's a little bit, especially if he had a whole bunch of space behind him. It wasn't like he was back against the cage or anything. The center of the cage was behind Israel at this point, and Jan's back was against the cage. So he could have, rather than kind of just step in place, he could have stepped back and then engage again. But instead, he stepped right in place, and he's gonna get ready to throw his jab. Right as he's going to do that, cross counter. Jan hits him with the cross counter over the top before he can even engage in anything. And that's I think that really did hurt Israel a little bit and threw him off for the rest of that round. That was the beginning of when it was like, okay, things are kind of shifting and things are gonna get like, a little bit messy and back and forth, and then eventually Jan also got the takedown in that round too. So my takeaways from the fight, I feel like Israel, obviously he had a good plan, he had a good game plan with certain things in terms of using his feints. You should always be using your feints and trying to, trick your opponent and all that, but he didn't use enough body attacks in my opinion. I feel like some more front kicks to Jan's liver would have been very effective, especially from southpaw stance. Use that front kick and then maintain distance. He's the longer, taller guy. Your front kick, and he has those long arms, you maintain distance. Jan is very powerful. He can explode forward, and obviously he didn't want to get countered off throwing a front kick, but he used enough feints that I think he should have been mixing that in a little bit more. It would have had Jan's hands dropping a bit more as well. And I think the high kicks would have been a little bit more effective. In fact, I feel like the high kicks were to his detriment in this fight. I felt like if he threw way more inside low kicks from the southpaw stance and just front kicks, low kicks, front kicks, body kicks, it's almost like people are expecting Izzy to throw high kicks, like question mark kick. It's almost, people kind of are now starting to catch on to that a little bit. So it's like he needs to kind of differentiate attack a little bit more. Or at least, this is my opinion. Like this is the reason why I feel like Jan was able to have success against him, because he was able to kind of just defend against that. And he's like, I feel it coming. It's just like, keep that hand high. You can still get clipped with that kick. Don't get me wrong, right? Still hurt the guy. But, I felt like if he threw a little bit more front kicks, maybe that could have kind of changed the pace a little bit. And also tire out Jan as well. If you hit him a little bit more to the body, could have took away his gas. But Jan is a powerful dude. Sometimes when you hit the front kick, got sweaty and everything like that, it slips off and dude is coming forward, exploding with big power. It's a dangerous game. We understand, like, you never know what's going to happen. You can do that, you can slip, guy comes forward, clips you, it could be end of your night. So it's always a give and take in this game. But Jan really impressed me. I think Jan is way more of a threat and dangerous than people actually give him credit for, even myself. I thought he would be a dangerous fight, but I thought that Israel would have had enough tools at his disposal to kind of just weather the storm and maybe confuse him and take him out. That's not what happened. And it was a really entertaining fight. I thought it was a pretty good fight from both guys. I'm a striker, and I love striking in martial arts and everything like that. So I do love jiu-jitsu and grappling and wrestling, everything like that. But the last, when it did get into the grappling phase, it kind of slowed down completely. It wasn't like a whole lot of passing going on. Jan just kind of got into half guard on top and didn't just lay there. He was doing work, but it was pretty much just remained there for most of the rounds until he got the mount in the last round and started doing some more work. But that is my analysis. I think Israel's gonna bounce back. Like, I don't really, when I look at this fight, don't really look at this like really hurting his stock as much as people are claiming. Like they're talking about Jon Jones, like, oh, Jon Jones will kill him now and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, maybe Jon Jones probably would work him, but I also think it'd be a different fight, especially seeing the fight a second time right now. Jon has different tools at his disposal than Jan Blachowicz, you know what I'm saying? Jan is more of a kickboxer. He's more proficient with that. He's more odd and awkward and tricky in that space, and he has more power than Jon. So Jon's threat would be a wrestling threat more so than a striking threat to Israel, in my opinion, still, even after this fight. But yeah, I don't think Israel lose much stock after this fight. I mean, comes in, dude's like 20 pounds heavier than him. Nothing really to lose, and I feel like This is it's kind of like the best case scenario. It sucks for Israel, right? But it's the best case scenario in a way because he doesn't really lose anything because a bigger guy beat him. He went for it because a lot of these guys they didn't. He won the championship, defended it twice, and he just immediately like, I'm going for it. Going up a weight. Not even not to knock John Jones. I probably think John Jones was smarter to stay and cement his legacy at light heavyweight, but it took him quite a long time before he decided I'm going to go to heavyweight. So, no risk, no reward. He didn't get the reward this time, Israel. Jan, however, gets his stock to go up. People get to know his name even more. They're like, who's this Polish guy who beat the... I thought Israel Adesanya was unbeatable, and this Polish guy comes out of nowhere and spoils the whole party and everything. And that's a great... especially, he's 38 years old. He's getting up there in age. It's just like, it's a great... You have to feel good for him because his stock gets to rise a little bit. His profile gets to rise a little bit. Maybe he gets to get a little bit more... endorsement deals out of it, more exposure. So I think it was a good night. I think it was a good night, and it's a learning experience for Israel. He's gonna be back. He's tough. He's smart, and I still think he's gonna dominate the middleweight division. So that's my analysis. I will be doing more of these in the future, more reviews, more previews potentially, and hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something.